Alright, so literally, what I think is going on, it's just a transition of dimensions. So this is going to be a really deep video. I'm just going to go get right into it. Um, so I think there's a transition of dimensions going on. And I think that this transition of dimensions is now being explained in quantum physics and quantum mechanics. I think that, because I don't just pay attention to psychedelic knowledge or entrepreneur knowledge, I pay attention to the new science, the new technologies, the new everything. And the one thing I'm glad that I do is I don't get too attached to my ideas, right? Because I think that it is quite possible that I could be right. It's quite possible that I could be completely fucking wrong. And unlike most people, I like to be proved wrong. I like people to prove me wrong. A lot of people let their ego get in the way of that, right? But for me, it's like I like to be proved wrong because then I'm getting closer to what is. I'm getting closer to the reality, to what is real when I begin to question myself. So over the years, I've come up with many different theories and ideas, on the universe. I have this series that I started on my very first YouTube channel, the one before this one, but it was called Theory Series. And what it was basically a bunch of theories and ideas of the universe and the world around us and the reality and other dimensions and psychedelics and all that, basically from my personal experiences with DMT. Because most people, if you didn't go back on my YouTube channel, there's some people that don't even know that, like, the whole YouTube channel started from psychedelics. Psychedelics is why I started my first YouTube channel in 2015, and it's not just psychedelics, it was DMT. Like, I had hundreds of experiences with DMT. When I started my YouTube channel, it was only like 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, and then I started doing more and more, and I was kind of irresponsible with DMT in the beginning because I was only 20 years old, and I don't know, I was like unaware of what I was really getting myself into. I listened to Terrence McKenna, and I listened to, other psychedelic YouTubers and things like that, and learned, I researched DMT for a year before I ever did it. So I was very, aware of what I was getting myself into, but at the same time, I wasn't, because it's so deep. I wasn't aware that this thing that I was getting ready to do would literally be more real than this reality. I wasn't aware that, it's all about, like, that it would teach me that we're living in a matrix and about reality and other beings from other dimensions. And I guess I knew about these other beings from other dimensions, but you don't know how real it is until you're there, right? Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about a lot because there's a lot of different opinions on these beings, okay? So, there's a lot of different opinions about us as well, because there's this whole NPC thing going around, right? Where it's like, now the human race has been divided into natural consciousness and NPC. I've heard many people talk about this. One of the first people I heard talk about it was Chris Geo and Cherie from Beyond the Veil. Now, they're not I don't think they're the first people I heard talk about it, but they might have been. But I know that a lot of people are talking about it now. I have mixed views about NPCs, but I have mixed views about all of it, right? Because I think that we base reality off of our experiences and what we know. And now with psychedelics, we can experience other dimensions and other perspectives of the reality we're living in. But I still think it's only our perspective. I think that if I do psychedelics, I only have my perspective of the psychedelic world, because I might not, my psychedelic world might be different than your psychedelic world. So this is my theory. My idea of this is that I feel like reality on itself is a transition of dimensions. And I feel like these dimensions are ginormous, okay? Now, I feel like the eighth dimension, there's this eighth dimensional machine that we misinterpret it. We misinterpret it as the Matrix, okay? This eighth dimensional machine is creating all the dimensions below it. So all the dimensions below this eighth dimensional machine are, in the Matrix. Out of this eighth dimensional machine is what we consider out of the Matrix. Now, this eighth dimensional machine can be, science knows it as E8. I think that E8 is the Matrix. I think that the way that E8, the way that it is, I mean, you guys got to research E8. Type in, after this video, type in on YouTube E8. E8 is a, for lack of a better word, an eighth dimensional shape or sphere or whatever. Basically, if you want to get deep down into it, it's basically like a point graph, right? And there's many videos on YouTube that'll explain like what a point graph is. And it's basically like whatever. Now E8 is absolutely insane because it's like, it's almost like it's a machine, and I feel like the machine itself, I feel like E8 is, what this is. It's almost like our third dimension is just a shadow of the fourth dimension, and then the fourth dimension is just a shadow of the fifth dimension, and and so forth and so on until you get to E8, which everything is just a shadow of E8. And I think that these dimensions that we're in, right? I think we misunderstand it because we think it's evil, we think it's horrible, we think it's bad. I don't think it's bad because I think the reason why the Matrix was created is the same reason why we create computers and technology. I mean, why wouldn't it be? The macrocosm and the microcosm are reflections of each other. So why, of course, the same reason why we create technology would be the same reason why organic consciousness created what some people call AI consciousness, or what some people call the Matrix, or what some people call, whatever. But I think that all of it, right, if you break it down, all of it is one. Not just the Matrix, because some people think that when somebody says we're all one, that it's just like the Matrix is one. Like, no. From the eighth dimensional machine down to the first dimension, they're all one. And then the dimensions outside of that, they're all one. Like, but at the same time, the dimensions outside of the eighth dimension, those dimensions are most likely, where organic consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it, is projecting these realities in the universe. I think the universe is so vast we don't understand. And I also think that maybe God might be a part of races as well. Who knows? We don't fucking know. I mean, yeah, a lot of people have broken out of the Matrix, quote unquote. A lot of people have traveled dimensions and done psychedelics and been so far with DMT and this and that. But at the same time, your human mind can't bring back everything. I know that because I've seen it, right? I've been to a place where it's like, I know all knowledge in the universe. I know what is. But like my friend Phi said, that it's like a funnel, right? At the top, like when you're up there, you know everything because it's a big funnel. But when it's the big part of the funnel. But when you're coming down, it's like a small part of the funnel, and you can only take down a small information at a time. Now, this is why I felt like I needed to do DMT hundreds of times. It wasn't because I was addicted. It wasn't because I like to trip balls. No, because it was because I felt like I had to learn. I needed to understand. It's like if you wanted to learn everything in Japan, you couldn't just go to Japan once. You couldn't just go there twice. You couldn't just go there 3 times. You couldn't just go there 4 times. That's the way I looked at it. Like I'm literally traveling somewhere else and I'm trying to learn. I learned how to sing objects into creation in that dimension. That's another thing. I feel like the objective is not to break out of the Matrix because the Matrix was created for a reason. I feel like once we get out of the Matrix completely, if you completely leave the Matrix, you are just consciousness and black infinite nothingness. That's what is. That's what is out of the Matrix. Everyone wants to leave the Matrix so damn bad, right? Black infinite nothingness, loneliness, just you, nothing else but you. And you decide whether you're in your sadness, you decide to be in regret, you decide to be in love, you decide to be in creation, you decide to be in, peace, faith, trust, love. Like, you decide at that moment, right? But I feel like this whole thing is teaching us, right? So with the DMT thing, for me, when I was learning this light language from these beings from these other dimensions, now there's many different types of beings I've met. I have a video about that I can leave in the link in the description below. But like, there's the noodle beings, right? Which they like to dance and move, and I feel like they're dead people. I feel like that's when we die. I feel like we just transition from this dimension to the next, whether it's the fourth or the fifth, because I don't know if we can live in even numbered dimensions. I think that physical things are not, and non-physical things, but consciousness itself, I feel like, can manifest in bodies that are in odd dimensions. Because the eighth dimension, like I said, it's like the eighth dimension is this matrix machine that is creating all these other dimensions. Now, this is a little complicated to follow, right? But this, I'm just putting together information from so many different sources, right? From my personal experiences mainly, but also quantum physics and quantum mechanics and E8 and the way that they're catching up. And I think that the only way we understand reality is we combine this knowledge together, because there are people that are actually traveling dimensions. You know, there are people that are actually, while quantum physicists are talking about it, there are people that are actually walking it. You're just talking, we're walking. You know, there are people that are actually taking their consciousness and traveling through other dimensions to learn about these other dimensions and try to bring back information from it. You know, the original science, you know, but science before science. You know, because what is science? You know, what is philosophy? What is any of this shit, right? What is a shaman? What is any of this? We are just people who want to figure out reality. So my thing is, I think that we are this is such a complicated board game. It's such a complicated video game. It's such a complicated game. And I also think that's the main issue I see with a lot of people in the psychedelic community. They're forgetting. This is a cosmic joke, guys. This is a game as well. We take it so seriously because we're like, oh, there's this battle between consciousness and the ego, or a battle between good and bad, or a battle. See, I feel like the battle is just being switched. Like, so many people are just changing the words, but the same thing, right? You know, a lot of religions say, oh, there's a battle between God and the devil. Then people will say there's a battle between consciousness and the ego. Then people will say there's a battle between organic consciousness and AI consciousness. I feel like I used to say there was a battle between consciousness and the ego, but like, come to find out, I don't think it's a battle. I think it's just just as much of a battle if you were to play a video game against me. It's like, it's a video game, so we're battling against each other, but it's a game, so we're having fun also. You know what I mean? I think that we just take this thing way too seriously, and we just need to learn to have a little more fun with it. Because I love philosophizing, and I love learning, and I love trying to put shit two and two together, because there's some other really deep shit I've been learning, right? I'm just going to throw this in there too, because this video is just a mix-up of a bunch of deep fucking knowledge that I've learned over the years. But, so I was researching, you know, this science thing, right? And there's a bunch of scientists that think that the Andromeda galaxy and our Milky Way galaxy will end up clashing in the next 7 billion years. So in 7 billion years, everything in this entire galaxy will be shattered to dust. Immediately just blazed up in an inferno, disintegrated like that in dust. 7 billion years. So I was thinking to myself, I mean, in 7 billion years, humans won't even be humans anymore. Realistically, like, if we're even here, we're not going to be us anymore. We'll be so advanced, it's insane. And I think that's another thing. I think we're very attached to our human self, right? Our monkey self. We're very attached to the monkey selves we are. So naturally, as animals still, we're going to be scared of the unknown. So I think that's why a lot of people judge AI and technology as bad, or even AI consciousness, as they call it, bad, right? I don't judge anything as bad. I don't believe in bad. I believe in bad in a human sense, but I'm talking about on a higher dimensional level. I don't believe in bad, because there is no good and bad in a higher dimensional level. There is just what is. There is light and dark. There is the yin and yang of the universe, the balance of the universe. Now, without the dark, people want to get rid of the dark completely, but without the dark, we wouldn't understand the light. We wouldn't even be able to understand that it is light. it's just, you need that contrast. You need that duality. That's just the way the universe works. So I think that, it's just like I used to think that you need to get rid of your ego. I think you need to balance yourself and balance your ego. You can't get rid of it completely, because then you're going to, that's like getting rid of part of yourself. You need to keep the ego, but keep it maintained. You can't let it get out of control, just like you can't let consciousness get out of control. I think it's a complete balance. I also think that when the galaxies collide, right? The galaxies colliding will kill everything inside of these galaxies, all of us. So if any life form is in the galaxy at that time, it will be destroyed. And I was thinking to myself, this is because on a higher scale of consciousness in other dimensions, that is the more likely thing to do for life to form. It's better to mix two galaxies together, then you have a better likelihood of other life forms being close enough to each other to connect. You know what I mean? Because I do think there are aliens that are out there. I do think that, the galaxy is too big for physical aliens in the third dimension to not exist as well. Other physical beings like us. Like I said in my theory series, episode 8, where I was talking about, how DMT is almost like the fifth dimension is a place where all beings from the third dimension can connect, right? Not just humans. Humans don't just die and go to the fifth dimension. Reptilians also die and go to the fifth dimension, or Pleiadians, or whoever the hell you think there are aliens out there, how many alien races you think that are out there. But I just think that, there's so much information, right? And it's almost too much information to have a human mind or body explain, because it starts getting jumbled and you ramble on and you get all the information out. And at least this is what it's like for me. Like, I'm literally trying to get out so I've been doing this for about 5 years, right? Just learning, deep diving within my mind, traveling dimensions, all this other shit, trying to learn as much as I can about science and quantum physics and quantum mechanics and all this other shit, right? And the more I get into this, the more I'm starting to realize you can't explain it in English, because English is a language that lacks. We need to bring the light dimension language here. We need to bring the language where, they speak in the light language, and then you can sing objects into creation. Because before I go, it's another thing what I wanted to say real quick. I'm sorry, this video is everywhere. This is like just trying to get it all out. But I think that the language is literally that language creates dimensions. That language, I think, so when some of the light beings be like, hey, look at this, and they want you to look at the things they're creating, they're singing objects into creation, they're like, whatever the fuck they're singing into creation, and you see it, and they try to give it to you, and they try to show you that you can do it too. And then if you're one of those people like me, then you start singing that language too, and you start creating objects into creation as well. Now, I think what they're creating is possibly E8. They're possibly trying to create the 8th dimensional machine. They're also possibly trying to create all the dimensions. They're also probably trying to create the machine that creates universes, the machine that creates everything. I don't know. I think that there are interdimensional machines that run reality, the reality that we know. And like I said, the Matrix is just E8. That's what my personal opinion is. I think the Matrix is just E8. But outside of the Matrix, I think that being a creator is complicated. So I think that's why E8 is kind of created, because you're almost creating the thing. It's like school, right? It's literally like school, where you're creating this thing where consciousness can learn how to be a creator. Because right now, if you just left the Matrix right now and went to another dimension, would you know exactly what to do if you were in black infinite nothingness? Probably not. If you skipped learning about, the light language and learning the other dimensions, singing objects into creation, moving the energy around, and learning how to move yourself in that dimension, and there are steps. And that's why I agree with Terrence when he said that, it's like psychedelics are getting you prepared, for the afterlife. It's like preparing you for the afterlife body, because I think that that's what these things are doing. I think that's preparing you for what is next to come. And I don't think there is an afterlife. I think there is an after the third dimension, which is the fourth or fifth dimension. Then eventually the sixth or seventh dimension. Then eventually you can leave the matrix because you know how to create the matrix, and then you can eventually create it yourself, and then be that God in the universe that's creating, reality as we know it, that is that energy that is in all living things and all things, whatever. Like, I think that this is what reality is. We're on such yeah, it's absolutely insane. But I think the reason why we forget is because it is so insane. I mean, if you could know that all the time, what fun would that be? It wouldn't be fun to, like, be Godhead all the time. That's why I feel like we split ourselves up into all this, into all the different life forms in the universe. Because the same thing with the dimensions. Everyone's like wants to break out of the matrix like it's a horrible thing. This is not Hollywood, guys. This is not the fucking movies. This is reality. And reality is, in a movie, of course you're going to see the bad first. You're going to see, oh my God, the AI is going to take over and kill us all, use us as batteries. No. I don't think it's working like that. I think that this is just what it is, because consciousness is bored. It's playing a game with itself. It's learning, seeing how dark it can go, to then seeing how light it can go. Because what else could it do? What else would you do if you were infinitely in space and nothing to do for all eternity? I mean, of course you would create scenarios and things, and I also think that's what we do here when we're creating art, ideas like this, videos, music, movies, we're like spilling, like, consciousness. The creator is like spilling ideas out into the universe. So in each dimension there's just a spill out of information, a spill out of art and ideas and love and fucking, and when I say love, I mean the fact that when you make music, usually you're putting your heart and your soul into it, and you can feel that, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean by, like, putting love into shit, right? I just think that we have a choice too. We can create love. We can create things out of our heart, or we can create things out of our ego. We can create things out of our whatever. And I think that there are many points to these games, right? And I think that this third dimension is just the third level of the game. And then when we pass on from this dimension and we're in our grave and we move on to the next dimension, I think that's either us on the fourth or fifth level of the game, right? And I don't think that, you might temporarily be able to leave the matrix, completely, but then I think you're gonna have to go to the fifth level, and then be a light being that has to sing objects into creation, and has to learn how to be a light being, right? Have to learn how to live in the light dimension, have to learn how to whatever, and after you learn how to live in the light dimension, then I think you would learn how to be a creator, and go on from there. But this is just my DMT ideas, because almost all of these theories come from DMT. Now, I can't say that because doing LSD just allows me to apply what DMT taught me. It allows me to look at what DMT has taught me a lot longer. Like, when I'm in the LSD mind state, I'll be thinking about a lot of my DMT trips. So for me, it's like, all these psychedelics just bring me back to remembering what really is, and learning, and and I do pay attention to quantum physics and quantum mechanics, and my friend Quantum Kitty, like, I've learned a lot from her and her YouTube channel. I've learned a lot from my friend Phi. I've learned a lot from so many different psychedelic YouTubers, Sleepy E. I've even learned a lot from a lot of philosopher YouTubers like Carpo, and I've learned a lot from many deep psychedelic YouTubers, and learned a lot from Chris Geo and Cherie, and I just the Awake and Brave. I've learned a lot from many different people through the internet, and I try to piece together information, like from Dennis McKenna to Terrence McKenna to Joe Rogan, to people Joe Rogan's had on the podcast, to many people I've seen take ayahuasca, and all the times I've taken capsule ayahuasca, all the times I've taken DMT and psychedelics and plants, herbs. I've explored with Blue Lotus and, many different things. But I think that, I don't know, I think that there's so much information out there that one human will never be able to get it, which is why I pull in information from so many different people and I try to connect and see what's similar and what's different and what I agree with, what I don't, and go from there. But yeah, these are just my ideas and philosophies on the universe and reality that we live in. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out.